Okay, so Peter, would
Yes.
you like to introduce Dr. Stokes? And for the next 30 minutes, he will be our speaker.
Okay, no problem. Good morning, everybody. Nelson Christian Stokes is the founder and executive chairman of NCS Enterprises, a group of companies focusing on financial services, thought leadership, and sports administration. The group, which is among the leading fintech businesses in the Northern Caribbean, offers alternative banking services to the unbanked and underbanked with the goal of financial empowerment, capital formation, and economic mobility. He holds a PhD in economic development policy from the University of the West Indies, an MBA in finance from Washington State University, and a BSc in finance from the University of Idaho, and a postgraduate diploma in banking from the Estonia Graduate School of Banking. He speaks Spanish and is certified at the advanced level in the language by the Instituto Cervantes, Madrid, Spain. Dr. Stokes is an adjunct consultant with the University of the West Indies, Mona School of Business Professional Services Unit, and does team building, change management, and leadership training for corporations worldwide. He has acted as an economic policy advisor to governments and public sector bodies in the Caribbean and has delivered high-impact keynote speeches to a wide variety of corporate audiences worldwide. He is a four-time Olympian as a member of the Jamaica bobsleigh team and has played a key role as both athlete and administrator in establishing Jamaica bobsleigh as a leading, though unlikely, competitor in the sport, with multiple Olympic qualifications and medal placements at international competitions. He is currently chairman and CEO of the Jamaica Bobsleigh and Skeleton Federation. His book, Cool Runnings and Beyond, The Story of the Jamaican Bobsleigh Team, is a definitive history of this renowned Jamaican brand. He is chair of the World Olympians Association's Awards Commission, chair of the Caribbean Association of National Olympic Committee's Marketing Commission, and a member of the International Bobsleigh and Skeleton Federation's Audit Committee. Welcome, Chris.
Chris, you're muted.
Oh, yes. Given the entire speeches during the pandemic muted, so thank you for catching me on that. You all have. Peter, thank you very much for that. It's good to see you. I see you're maintaining your distinguished gentleman look.
Chris, I'm following the best. I'm following Chris.
So thanks for the invitation and good to meet you. I'm really impressed with what I've heard and seen going on in Cameroon, and I as there's an untold story, and I'm heavily in the world of business, and people are always talking about who is pursuing money and profits and being selfish. But I think there's an untold story about the human spirit that maybe it's not sexy, maybe it won't grab the headlines, but it needs to be told. And I really believe in my heart that is what is really going on in the world. More than one thing can be going on. But I believe that the world is more about people making sacrifices and contributions. And let me give you one quick story before I get into my presentation. I'm assuming many people here would have seen and heard about the movie Cool Runnings, which is was made on the bobsleigh team that I was a part of in 1988. And in that movie, it featured the European bloc that was trying to keep us out of the Olympics. And there's a lot of focus on that. But the truth of the matter is there are many European countries and persons, including Prince Albert of Monaco himself, who work very hard to get us in. And for some reason, those sorts of stories about our better angels don't seem to be what people want to hear about. I'm not sure what that is about, but congratulations on what you guys are doing here and what's going on in Africa. And I'm pleased to be here. So I've been asked to speak about accelerating Jamaica's economic growth through youth engagement. And I want to take somewhat of a holistic approach to it, and not just attack the issue directly. Jamaica is a complex country. There is a book out on Jamaica by Orlando Patterson called The Confounding Island, because it is a country that is full of conflicts and incongruences. You know, the same country that produces the most outstanding, brightest citizens of the world, that has produced the only Black chess grandmaster in the world, that has produced its own religion, that has produced the only non-American spelling bee champion, is the same country with high levels of violence and poor education. It's the same country, the same people. You know, so it's a bit of a contradiction, and you'll see that as I get into the presentation here a little bit. But allow me, at risk of boring you, let me just speak a little bit about economic development and you know, how it works and what drives it. And I want to focus on three things today. The first is, you know, I'm trying not to, you know, sound as if I'm in economics 101 here, but the first thing is capital formation. That's goods and services that you have are actually goods, equipment, tools, so on, in an economy that is very important to driving economic growth. If you don't have the machinery, you don't have the roads, you don't have the factories, you cannot drive economic growth. All right, so capital formation is key to economic growth. And again, it's the economic system that we have chosen. Is coming out of the Industrial Revolution. You know, we saw where cities changed. It's blamed for you know, current climate change, right, in some quarters. But you need to have capital formation to have growth. A country like Jamaica is challenging because it's not, you know, we don't have the capital internally from saving, certainly not enough. So we tend to attract capital from overseas, what we call direct foreign investment, DFI. But it's not something that we have control over. It's something that we have to bring in from overseas. And sometimes it goes well and sometimes it doesn't. The point is, capital formation is critical to economic prosperity and development. The second thing is technological processes and progress. Now, when I say technology, I don't mean that you have an iPhone, although that is part of it. I don't mean that you use TikTok, but though that could be part of it. I don't mean that you see people in a room working on a computer, although that could be part of it. When I say technology, and let's be clear, the invention of the wheel was a massive leap in technology for humankind. The invention of fire was a massive leap in technology for humankind. The invention of toilet paper by the Scott brothers was a massive technological investment for mankind. The invention of sewer system and canal was a massive technological investment. So I know nowadays when we think technology, we start immediately to think of Apple and Google and Facebook and so on. But it's really how we organize ourselves to do our work better. All right. Any economy that intends to grow and intends to grow well has to be good at this. The third thing, and there are more, but the third thing that I want to talk about is the need for developing countries to continue to pursue policies to increase human capital development and human productivity. All right. Now, in economics, productivity refers to how much input, or, you know, what you do. You do one unit of thing and it produces one unit of another thing. Can that one unit of the thing, the person, produce 5 units, right? So that is what we talk about when we say productivity. In Jamaica, Peter, you remember Mutty Perkins, when we had the influx of Chinese workers in the free zones, and they were stitching clothes, you know, and it was shocking to our culture. You know, they would literally work all day from morning until late in the night. They wouldn't take lunch breaks. I mean, I don't want to generalize, but there's a case of not taking lunch breaks where they would actually mix their rice in a liquid so that they could drink it through a straw so they could continue working, which caused Mutti to make the comment that one Chinaman can do 5 Jamaicans work, right? That's productivity. Now, there are a whole lot of things around that. Some good, some not so good. But the concept of, and you see, you know, the thing between the cost and the productivity in China, maybe not so much now, but certainly in the last 30 years, I would say, where China has made a lot of progress simply because of the productivity in producing the goods that the world wants to consume. Now, that productivity doesn't mean that they do it necessarily better than the guy in Ireland, but they have found a way to do it cheaper, right? But the human capital development is important. Now, this is where Jamaica could have an advantage, and we're probably, of all the continents in the world, Africa has the biggest advantage because it has what it doesn't need to import, it doesn't need to attract, it has bodies, human beings, right? There's a severe shortage of labor in most parts of the world. It's severe in the United States right now. You know, you know, you walk around, you see, you know, people looking for folks to hire and can't find folks. So despite all you see going on with inflation, the attempt to slow down the economy, or slow down inflation, the unemployment rate is still very low in the US. If you look at China, there's a big concern because at the current rate, by the end of the century, China's population, instead of being 1 billion, will be 500 million because they're not replacing themselves through their fertility rates. And if you don't have the people, you can't do the work. Jamaica has the people. So this is the point to start with as an advantage. Africa has the people, it's a massive advantage. The problem that we have is how to convert those persons, how to develop that human capital. You have to make them yes, we have the people, it's a gift, but we have to make the people more productive. And that has to be done through the, you know, human capital accumulation, development of skills, training, productivity, so on and so forth. And we know that educated, healthy, employed, and civically engaged youth, young people, drive economic growth, democracy, prosperity. And this is it's a sentence, but it's based on tremendous studies that have been done. When we fail to engage that youth development, it tends towards spikes in violence, instability, unrest, and migration. All right. Now, before I go on, there are 2 things I want to talk about, you know, because we're talking about the actual human being as part of economic development. You have to be careful because there are a couple of, and we're talking about youth. There are a couple of things that are happening in the world that will change the dynamic of this economic model. The first is the productivity of the older population. People are living longer, living healthier. You're telling somebody to retire at 65 when they're at the prime of the game. It's not sustainable. Peter, you know my mom, she's 83 and she's running the entire sales training program at Mayberry. You know that.
I know that, yeah,
right?
I know that, yes.
No, you know, why was she forced to retire at 63 when she's far more productive now, today? Right? So that is something that as a society we have to engage and to question these assumptions. All right. In another 20 years, 30 years, when people are living to 150, what are we going to do? You're going to, you know, it's like telling somebody no to retire at 35.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we have to revisit that. So I know we're talking about youth, but that is on the horizon. Second thing on the horizon is AI and human capital development. What will be the impact of artificial intelligence on human productivity? Will you need humans at all? And of ironies, AI seems to be more inclined to replace professional persons, lawyers, doctors, than it does laborers, blue-collar workers. And isn't that one of the great ironies? And, you know, people say God has a sense of humor. But AI, as it stands now, will have a greater impact on professional white-collar workers than on blue collar. There's been talk, Elon Musk in an interview with Rishi Sunak some weeks ago said point blank, as he's want to do, that, in the future, people will not have work to do at all. There's been talk about a universal basic wage, right? So that you just give somebody money, you don't have to work. Of course, as an economist, it doesn't work, because if you don't make money, if you don't have money in your hand, you can't consume money. You can't consume anything, therefore there's no point in producing it, right? So that's on the horizon. The age thing, the AI, we're not sure it's going to work, but as we speak here, human capital is an important part of economic growth. Peter, could you go to the slide for me that I had sent, the next slide? Yes. All right, let me speak, and I was going to go through these slides, and it's important. And this is about the changes in the youth, 15 to 24 in different populations. You see, for example, and let's just use Europe, which is the purple, it's coming down and leveling off, as is North America, as is Oceania. I mentioned China as a massive part of Asia, that went up. Asia went up significantly, but is projected to come down. So there's going to be less youth in the population. But look at Africa. This is a tremendous advantage for Africa to under the current economic paradigm. Those young people that are in Africa can be a massive contributor to economic development. One of the theories that's surrounding in economic development circles is the way that the slave trade underdeveloped Africa, by taking out of Africa the bulk of its young workforce. So they're not there anymore, just stripping it away from the continent and moving it to the Americas. That is one of the explanations, or the whole body of work around that seeks to explain part of the underdevelopment of Africa during that period. That is what it is. Right now, in 2024, almost said 2023, we have an opportunity, because Africa now has that massive 18 to 24-year-old workforce, and how do we educate them and get them productive and get them driving the economy? I think for Africa is a huge opportunity, and I hope it's something that's taken advantage of. If you look at Latin America and the Caribbean, that green line, it's flattened off a little bit, which is a little concerning, but it's not a big worry right now. Next slide, please, Peter. Just by way of comparison, of course, let's look at Africa versus Europe. You see the 18 to 19. You see how the bulge is at the bottom for Africa? That's where their population is. All right, median age 18 to 19. Those are just human persons and spirits and talent and energy and focus that can be driven towards economic development. You'll see where right now Europe is 43 to 44. Birth rates are down, and it's going up. They'll have their own challenges. But so we have access to the technology. Maybe we don't have as much capital, or Africa doesn't have as much capital, but it has the persons. And so the challenge then is to educate them and make them productive. Next slide, please, Peter. Please, Peter. All right, Jamaica specifically. You'll see where that well, first of all, Jamaica it's somewhat evenly distributed between male and female. The bulk of the population is still, well under 35, or let me say under 40 years of age. All right, and that's a good thing, including quite a bit of young people. The challenge that Jamaica has right now, and you should be aware, is that our birth rates are down. So if you actually look at the chart to the right, if at the current rate of change, there'll be nobody living in Jamaica in 2100, because we would have all died out and we would not have had enough children. And it is a concern for the Ministry of Health. Christopher Tufton is addressing it, which is a big change, Peter, from, you remember in the 70s when it was, two is too many?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Two is too many. Two is too many. Yes.
Two is too many.
Yes.
Two is too many because we're just people are having 5 and 6 children. No, they won't have 2.
Yeah.
Sorry,
my mom had 8 kids. We had 8 kids.
Yeah. My grandmother's 7, my mother 3, and I have 1.
Okay.
Right? No, that's where it's going. Next slide, please. All right, so the birth rate in Jamaica, and just to confirm that point, has been going down from 1.4% in 42 in 2020, 1.45 in 21, 1.4. This is cumulative, by the way, 1.46 in 2022, 1.64 in 2023. So we're having less children in Jamaica, which in the long term is an issue. It is not our immediate problem. Next slide again, please. All right. So this shows the birth rate coming down rather dramatically, and the potential impact on the rate. But if you look at it, the issue is on the bottom chart, everything is under 0. We're going down. There's no time that our birth rate is positive again. All right. And this is a problem for the country. I believe that's the last slide, right, Peter? Yes. Not yet. Not Q&A. Let me go back to them. All right.
Back up.
Okay, so that's a problem. All right. Now, so we have, for the time being, Africa and Jamaica have the young people. How do you develop that human capital? All right. And it's a big problem in Jamaica. Let me mention a couple of things. The Orlando Patterson, the same gentleman who wrote the Confounding Island, sociology professor at Harvard, was at UA as a professor as well, chaired a group that produced the Jamaica Education Transformation report, chaired the commission rather. And let me share with you some information. This is what we're dealing with in Jamaica, all right? 70% of students leaving high school don't have a certificate to say that they attended or that they acquired any skills or any learning, 70%. A majority clearly are leaving school without marketable skills. So there's nothing to do, you haven't learned anything that makes you employable. And although we have had improvements in the GSAT, and you probably did common entrance, Peter, but you remember GSAT and GNAT and PEP. And
I can't tell you everything about common entrance. I've heard the others, but
yeah. I did common entrance too.
Yeah.
Right, but they change, they change it from just being wrote and memorizing to PEP, which is analytical thinking. And only 41% passed in math, 49% in science, and 55% in the language arts. All right, so that's the country we're living in. CSEC, which is our secondary exam, only 42.5% passed five or more subjects. 28% passed those subjects to include the basics of English and math, numeracy and literacy. At the higher level, at the Cape or A levels, only 45% passed any subjects there at all. 40% of those they were able to get an associate's degree from that program. 1 in 4, approximately, secondary school leaders goes on to tertiary education. Now, I know tertiary education is getting a beating. Even in the US, less and less people are opting to go to college. But when it works well, and it's an important part of educating a population for further development. So that number is not good, especially when we think that the other 75%, the other 3 out of 4 are probably not doing anything. All right. Now, the irony of this is that in Jamaica, the unemployment rate is only 4.5%, which is outstanding. Now, the unemployment rate among youth is 16.6% approximately, which is high. And people, people see this and they clap and they say, "Wow, Jamaica is doing well." The US is 3 point something, Jamaica is 4 point something. Until you read the fine print, which is, how do you measure the workforce? It's people who are willing, are able to, and are looking for jobs. In Jamaica, we have about 700,000 people who are eligible to be in the workforce who are not. That is about half the number of people that are in the workforce. And think about that. You could be in the workforce or you're not. So that 4.5% is a little misleading because people are just not looking for jobs. Now, some of those are in school, some are self-employed, which must not be dismissed, especially the self-employed part, because Jamaica has a vibrant informal economy. So we mustn't say that they're not doing anything useful. What we do know, just from the eye test, is that there are vast numbers of youth in Jamaica that are just, as we say, on the corner, just sitting down without purpose, on the verge of despair, without goals, opportunities, so on and so forth. Now, the irony in all of this is that Jamaica has a labor shortage right now. In fact, there's a massive conversation about bringing in labor. And a lot of it has to do with the willingness of these youngsters, of these persons to engage in employment, of the 700,000. The willingness, do they have the skills? And the government has been taking many initiatives to engage them, but it has not been successful. And right now there is serious talk about bringing in labor into Jamaica for construction, in particular for farming and for the hospitality industry, which would seem strange to anybody who grew up in Jamaica, right? But there's a social thing going on about the attitude towards work, engaging work, the training for work, and a general despair about in the country. It is particularly concerning given, if anybody here has traveled in the Caribbean, if you go to Bermuda, Turks and Caicos, Cayman, Barbados, Anguilla, throughout the Caribbean, many of these economies, especially in the hospitality sector and the construction sector, are built on the sweat of Jamaicans, right? And I tell the story often of a Jamaican plumber, used to do some work for me in Jamaica, who would take a bus to come to do work for me. He migrated to Cayman, and he came to pick me up at the airport in his car and took me to his home where he lived. No, and this is not possible in Jamaica. So you can't blame people for wanting to go overseas. All right. The same Jamaica with these low economics, educational standards is the same Jamaica, and you check it out, that has among the best students throughout the educational system in the United Kingdom and the United States.
Chris, I hate to interrupt, but we're down to 5 minutes.
Okay, no problem. It's the same country. So it is a confounding island. All right. So the question then arises, what do we do? How do we engage these young persons? And thanks for that. First is that we have to invest heavily in education. This is essential. All right. And it doesn't mean just academic book work. We need to get into vocational training, technical education, digital literacy to empower youth. Right? And I'd say the same thing for Africa. We have to give them the skills to succeed. We have to acknowledge and recognize the importance of entrepreneurship and innovation. All right? Jamaicans have done very well in innovative ways as individuals. We've done it in music, the arts, and in business. We have to respect, we have a culture in Jamaica where you need to get a job, and being an entrepreneur is not really a job. We need to change that. A friend of mine who's the head of a bank says that his best customers now are folks on YouTube and in social media making money. We have to have programs of incubators, accelerators, mentorship programs. And this is This is where Rotary can come into place. You know, the mentorship of young people to get them up and going. We have to involve them in the third thing is that we have to involve them in the technical and digital economy. To harness use of technology. You can now live in Jamaica and provide services to persons anywhere in the world. You can teach English anywhere in the world. You can do graphic design. You can do animation. The world is your oyster. And we need to train people to take advantage of that. Social enterprises and sustainable development. It's as the world is facing issues with climate change and with generally with pollution and how do we take care of the planet, social issues and so on. Youth can be a part of that. Social entrepreneurship is important. Part of social entrepreneurship is advocacy and civic engagement. People like myself who just accept the world as it is, or, you know, my daughter now wants to change things, and that's an important role for youth, that energy, that vision, that wish to create a different future. Financial literacy becomes important. How do you manage your resources? How do you invest? How do you save? How do you borrow? That's an important thing that we need to develop. And finally, we need to get more young persons into volunteering and community development. It's not all about yourself. All right. And again, you know, I don't know, you know, in Rotary, how many young people actually volunteer and so on. But the seventh and last thing that is important, but that young people can do to drive economic development is through volunteering and community development. It's not going to happen by itself, but I think service organizations like Rotary have a very important role to play in this. So I hope I have not caused you to despair. What I have done is that I've pointed out to you what drives economic growth. I've said to you what parts we have naturally, what parts we have to import and is at a cost, which is the capital and some technology, what parts we have in front of us, which is the population and human capital that we need to develop. Yes, there's a problem with it, but it can be overcome through the initiatives that I just went through. So at the end of the day, it's an opportunity before us, and it is for us to decide how do we turn this massive asset or human capital towards generating economic growth for Jamaica, not to buy a new car, but to improve the living standards of all Jamaicans so people can live in dignity, feed the children, send them to school, and create a better world, create a better Jamaica for its citizens. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chris. We've got time for a question or maybe two. Anyone have a question for Chris?
I asked a question. Good morning, everyone. I asked a question in the chat earlier, like, what do you think we can practically do to encourage more births in Jamaica?
Okay, so you have to be careful with that, because, and I'm just speaking analytically, you know. So you don't want people who already have 5 children who can't feed them to have more. That's just I'm not getting into people's business, but just analytically at a macro level, it poses certain challenges, right? But there is a thing going on in the world now, where families are not, children not the center of families, and this is all through Latin America and the Caribbean, by the way, and in Asia, as you see. Women want to pursue their own careers and have children on their cycle. They're not going to stay home with 5 children. That's not going to happen anymore. So there's a whole issue around that. In China right now, they're actually trying to pay, they're on the verge of paying people to have more children, right? But they have given them all kinds of incentives and encouraged them and said it's a patriotic duty. And women in China, you look at the women in China just refusing to have more children. And I suspect that we're going to have that same thing in Jamaica, as more and more of our women are going to university, more of our women are becoming professionals. The matter of children becomes lower and lower on their priority list, and it is not. I think we may be switching to, and we can't go back to stay home and have 8 children. So we may well be switching to a different level of population, which would put Malthus's, I don't know if you can look up Malthus's theory of population, that would undo all of that. So there's no easy answer to that, I'm afraid.
Chris, I want to thank you for a very thoughtful and engaging presentation. I've only been involved, quote unquote, with Jamaica for about the past 8 or 9 months. I'm trying to learn about the country, about the culture, about economics, education. And your presentation today has opened my eyes in a couple of areas. And I think when I take what you've said and I compare it to my experience in the United States, there are a lot of similarities. There are differences, but a lot of similarities. And I think the world as a whole is facing a challenge for the future economy, if you like. You don't have any answers. I didn't expect answers. It's an extremely complex problem. But I want to thank you on behalf of everyone on the call today for opening our eyes to the challenges being faced in Jamaica. And certainly from our little world in this club, we were focusing on working with the Listermere Gilby High School for the Deaf, and I've been focused on the challenges of deaf youth in Jamaica. This has broadened my perspective now. It's not just deaf youth, it's youth in general. And I want to thank you for broadening my perspective like that. It's hopefully will help us to understand and become more fully engaged or engage differently as we move forward working with our partners in Jamaica. So thank you very much, Chris.
Well, thank you very much.
And as a small token of our appreciation, I will send you by email an e-certificate just thanking you for your participation today. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. And thanks for the... Go ahead, please.
I'm just going to say, you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you would like to. You're also, I understand,